Yeah, you're good, you're good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It is 6:04. I am calling school committee meeting number 1614 to order, there being a quorum in the room. We have no executive session this evening. I am looking for approval of the school committee minutes of meeting 1613 on September 23rd. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bonnie Silvers and Dennis. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, you came in a little late.
That's fine.
All right.
I have,
You have corrections?
I do too.
I do.
Okay, Jeff first and then Bonnie.
A question on the section B of the public health team meeting update, which was 7B. The second bullet point about talking about the opt-out rather than opt-in approach. Was there discussion also about whether the state website for opting in precluded us from doing opt-out? I feel like that came up in the conversation. And I wasn't sure if that was in this section or not. That's one question I have to ask the group, and if it needs to be appended. And then when discussing business with district.
Can we decide that issue before people forget what you just asked? And,
Yeah, sure.
I don't have a recollection of that discussion. I'm looking around the room here. I
Well,
don't.
there's a question whether why we can't have an opt-out rather than opt-in. Is that what the question
It
is?
has to do with the online version. Can you state that again so Sandy can answer your question?
Certainly, I can't remember exactly when in the conversation, but we did discuss, like, could we opt out versus opt in, but then there was a discussion about the state website and how the state website is really, it's not perfect and it's buggy, but then, like, are we even able to do the opt out because the state is coming in with opt in?
The answer is
Or might-
always
Opt-out,
right. Opt-out is not an option.
not an option.
It has nothing to do with the state system.
Okay, I think that needs to be reflected. It's not an option because of, wait, what?
That's never been an option. It's always, you have to opt in for testing, period. It has nothing to do with whether or not the state system is functioning or not functioning. It's not an option.
I think there should be a statement in our notes because I feel like that was covered in the meeting last time. And that's what's sticking in my head about the opt-out. It's saying, it seems open-ended in the minutes that our advisors, Amy Hart and Jill Sweet, said that it was available.
Well, I think what's in here is correct. I think Amy said she preferred if, she would personally prefer if it was an opt-out but that's not the case and it's not an option. That's what it says here in the second bullet, correct?
Okay. Oh, you're right in that it's not feasible. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed that. I read through it quickly.
I just looked at it myself.
And your second comment, Jeffrey?
And section 9A with the update on the regional school district planning board, I'm gonna nitpick because I remember this clearly. I think you said that you thought Laura would be the new representative from Monterey, but I don't think you announced that she was the representative, nor was it confirmed. It was more of a, oh wait, or did Laura do a thumbs up at that point?
I don't think.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay, I can get behind this. Never mind. I withdraw.
Okay. Bonnie, what do you have?
Mine is just little spelling things.
Why don't you send them to Lynette?
Yeah, why don't we
Okay.
send the
All
spelling? The spelling will be sent by Bonnie. Are there any conceptual other additions? Don't see any hands up. All right. I'll take a roll call vote to accept these minutes. Laura,
Yes.
Hill,
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here. I get the packet in time.
Okay, Tara?
I don't think Laura can vote because she wasn't a member of the school committee. at that
Oh,
meeting.
yeah, Laura, as Bonnie pointed out, you weren't a member when these minutes were taken, so.
No problem.
Okay, so now we go to Kara,
Yes.
and, all right, so then we're going to Bonnie,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Art,
Yes,
Jane, yes.
Jeff,
And Carrie
Jeff's got his hand
Ann,
up.
you had your face there for a minute.
Jeff has his hand up.
Carrie Ann, did I call on you? Guess she's gone for the, Carrie Ann, are you gone? I know it was, they were gonna have a problem tonight with multiple things. Okay, Jeffrey, did you want to come back to something?
No, I
Right.
wasn't. My vote is yes.
Okay, fine. All right, so on to enrollment.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I could just do a quick interruption. How does Laura spell her last name? Laura?
It's, it's RODRIGUEZ.
R-O-D-R-I.
GUEZ.
D-U-E-Z. Okay.
okay, so we have enrollment. Does anybody have any question about enrollment figures?
So the enrollment has stayed steady, so we're still at, for the 10-1 report, it's still at 635.
Okay, we're going on to miscellaneous correspondence,
I don't believe there is any, right?
and okay, yeah, so there isn't any. I did receive something today, but I think we'll take it up next meeting because you didn't get a chance to look. So I see a young face here. I wonder if I should go to student spotlight.
Do we have a representative on?
Is there a student representative yet from the high school?
In secondary, I don't see one today, so, okay, we're gonna have to go to spotlight then.
Okay, so student spotlight.
We have Charles behind you. He's gonna
Yeah,
start with
Mr.
a
Miller,
live
come on
person.
up. I'll move.
I have three victims, I mean volunteers for
Can you
student
move forward so that?
student spotlight. I'm going to introduce the three of them. Ollie, can you hear me? Oliver's here from first grade. And Kaya, can you hear me? I see Kaya here as well. And then to my left, I have Owen Sickett, and they are respectively first and fifth grade now. Wow.
Whoa.
And Owen's sister Emma is also a part of Garden Club. And today we are student spotlighting Garden Club, which is now 20 years running, as a way to bring in some of the community partners, not only organizations, but people who volunteer and give us time very often for no money at all to support enriching programs after school at Southern Berkshire. So Owen's going to introduce a little bit about Garden Club, and then I want to find out what Ollie likes the most about it, and Kaya as well. So Owen, take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Owen Sickett. I'm in fifth grade, and for the past 4 years, I've been participating in Garden Club. So what is Garden Club? In Garden Club, as the name implies, we garden. But this year-round program teaches more than just plants. We learn patience, cooperation, and respect, all while having fun and getting a little dirty. Some of the activities I've participated in include planting bulbs in the fall around school, like today, and watching them bloom in the spring, cutting pine boughs in the winter and using them to make wreaths, starting flowers and vegetables from seeds. Then I was able to take them home and plant them in my own garden. These flowers were started in Garden Club and grew all summer at home. They're zinnias. None of them without the patience and dedication of She teaches us about the needs of each plant and how its location matters to its survival. Then she lets us go and try it on our own with our hands in the dirt. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I really love participating in Garden Club. Are there any questions?
Very well
Well done,
done.
Ellen.
Really well done.
Before we take questions, I just want to give our two other volunteers an opportunity to add anything that they would like to. Kaya, I see you there. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've learned or what you like about Garden Club?
I like cleaning the greenhouse and planting plants in there, and and I like watering the plants and
Kaya, what was the plant outside of the front of Undermountain that you and Tessa were watering the other day? Do you remember? It had a funny name. Started with B. The Bob plant. I'm probably saying it completely wrong.
You don't remember?
no.
No problem. All right, well, thank you. And Ollie, is Ollie still there? Okay. Hey, Ollie, what do you love about Garden Club?
I love planting in the greenhouse and
What else do you like? You said planting. Okay, just like- Go ahead.
So Ollie today with younger kids who, well, on Tuesday too, who plant bulbs, we're planting daffodils all around, not only the front, but our community garden. And I should also shout out the wonderful work that Lynn Webster has undertaken to bring back the garden to life over the last couple of years at New Marble Central as well. And then finally, Greenagers, who has helped us beautify the beds and the gardens around South Egremont Schoolhouse. So all three of you, thank you. And now we'll take questions.
I have a question for Owen.
Yes?
Owen, does you and the garden club have any interest in learning how to pick raspberries? I happen to know someone that's got about 80 feet of them.
Wow.
That you know, need to be picked pretty soon. You know, if you're interested at all, I could probably make sure that they're made available for you. You know.
Does he get to keep them?
Pardon? He'd
Does
get
he
to
get to
keep
keep them?
his fair share, obviously.
He picks and eats, I should know.
That's the only way to do it.
So just let me know
I
if
will.
if you and the rest
I
of the
will make
garden
sure to
club
bring
wants to.
the matter up next Thursday.
Jeff has a seat.
Yes?
I was just curious, was there like a particular plant that surprised you how easy it grew, or something on the other side that was the hardest thing to grow that you thought would be easy?
No, I don't think so. I think all the plants are unique to see how to grow, and some of the tools I think though are harder than others. Like
Some of the what?
The tools.
Oh,
I was a tool called the Dibble to dig, but then I realized that I can't get the dirt back over it.
Bonnie? For any of the three of you, I'm curious whether your passion, have you been able to spread it to family and friends and get more people recognizing the importance of gardening?
Yes, I think my family, including my mom, keep a garden at home, and because we were able to bring it back to life this year, and I have told some of my friends at school about it, and yeah.
Do you think you will keep this up in life?
Yes, I definitely think that I will.
Well, I know what's gonna happen. Peggy Hendon Wilson is gonna need you as an assistant next year. Because once you've got a good garden clubber, you're in it for life.
Yes,
So I look forward to your leadership.
yes, thank you.
Kaya and Ollie, great job. Thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge Peggy Hendon Wilson, because I was on the building committee back in 1990 when we were fighting for a science room and a greenhouse, and without Peggy, that greenhouse would not be used. And she has persevered through personal trials and made great sacrifices to maintain this program. And you can tell because there's some cannas and other plants there that are like 15 feet high, and she's been maybe a whole generation has been nurturing those things, because her daughter is now in her 30s, and I believe she started when her daughter was in kindergarten. So thank you, Peggy, if you're listening.
Just a really quick. Oh, and I can't tell you how happy I am to see you. And we have another young man there having men involved in gardening. It is absolutely something to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. I'm his pottery teacher. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Owen. Nice
Thanks,
job.
Pardon me, but I have to go back to soccer.
Oh, okay.
All right, so here I am with my tools. This is our 3-minute timer that we're using for all speakers, both school committee members and public, to try to move our meeting forward in a positive way. So I'm opening up to public comment, and when I recognize you, don't take offense, but I'm going to turn this over, okay? So please put your hand up if you would like to be heard during public comment. Okay, Alana?
Thank you. And my name is Ilana. I am the parent of Ezra and Gabriel, who go to New Marlboro Central. They're in 3rd grade. I just want to speak to the student immunization discussion that you will be having further on. It's looking optimistic that the FDA will be meeting hopefully around October 27th to discuss passing the Pfizer vaccine for ages 5 to 11. We know that vaccines are the #1 way we are going to be able to hopefully defeat this virus. Just like the Johnson & Johnson and the Moderna vaccines, which are not fully approved through the FDA, it is okay to do a mandate before full federal approval with just emergency authorization. So I encourage you, as you start this discussion tonight, to think about January 1st as a time, as kids come back from Christmas break, that we should expect all children ages 5 to 11 who do not have an exemption to be able to be vaccinated against COVID. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and for your brevity. You passed the test. All right. I'll recognize Amy.
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to also comment on student immunizations and encourage the school committee to proactively write and pass a policy requiring that any eligible individuals, including students, piggybacking onto the teacher, staff vaccine mandate, that you would have that policy written and reviewed now and not wait until January to do that. As with any other vaccines that are mandated for students. I also wanted to comment on, agenda item 13, I guess this ties to in some capacity. Last year, with taking 4th grade out of New Marlboro Central School, there was discussion of having an early childhood development task force I would love to know when that will appear on the school committee agenda, and if that task force has in fact been developed, and if there's been any action on actually making New Marlborough Central an early childhood development center. And lastly, specific to a new business item, in the last school committee meeting, there was discussion of developing a COVID task force. So I don't see that on tonight's agenda. That feels really important, and that the school committee should be, working hard on developing that task force, because COVID isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I don't see any other hands up. Amy's hand is still up, but I think that's just from not taking it down. Great. Okay, so we are moving on to the new business, which is the Galapagos field trip in December, and you have in your packet. Thank you to Asha Van Ruden for sending us some information about it ahead of the meeting. And Asha, there you are. Can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about this trip you'd like to take?
Sure. I mean, it's the same trip that Danielle Molino had approved for April of 2020, which obviously was canceled at that point. We tried to run it last summer, but the Galapagos were not open at that point. Now they are, and so Explorica World Strides is running trips to the Galapagos at this point. And we have chosen, the next date we've chosen is December 27th to January 6th. And so what you have in your packet is all the safety precautions that World Strides has for all of its trips, but then also specifically for the Galapagos Islands, the things that are going to be required. Everybody is going to have to be vaccinated. Masks will have to be worn anywhere indoors. And there have to be tests done before we leave the United States. Even once we get to the Galapagos, to Ecuador, they will, before allowing us to go to the Galapagos Islands specifically, we'll have to be given the okay as far as that goes. And then we'll have to be tested again before coming back into the United States. So I guess at this point, we're requesting the trip. There are 15 travelers. At this point, only 5 of them are still Mount Everett students, because the rest have graduated or moved on to another school. So then the rest are parents, and then myself. Mary Hoover is the other staff person along with myself and 2 parents. So we're asking for permission to take this trip at this point.
So I'm entertaining questions from the committee members, and Bonnie has a question, and then Jeffrey.
With only 5 students who are our students, will there be any attempt to bring in additional students?
No, not at this point. Our trip numbers are complete.
Thank you.
In fact, we lost 1 traveler since last year.
Jeffrey?
I want to preface this that I'm a big fan of international exchange and opportunities like this. I do have some concerns though. Ecuador had really bad case of COVID exposure at the beginning of the pandemic. They had a massive surge that paralleled that earlier this year with Delta. And my concern is not necessarily about the protocols of like how the organization handles it. It's more of like sending kids in the midst of the pandemic, where there was a breakdown in Ecuador. I had a friend who was trapped there for over 4 weeks because he could not get back into the United States. And I'm curious about I want to express concern over the risk of having kids traveling under the purview of our school committee at this time internationally, especially to a country that did have a difficulty earlier. So that's my concern. My question though is, assuming, Ms. Van Ruden, assuming that, chaperones get ill or something like that, I'm assuming the trip would be canceled if, for example, our chaperones came ill or something, they could not be there or whatnot.
You mean before leaving?
I mean,
Between
yeah,
now
before
and
leaving, but
December?
I guess what would be the plan even if like in country, the chaperones became ill? And we're not
I
able
think
to.
Yeah, I think anybody would have to be, they would have to be quarantined and probably sent home immediately. But there are 4 adults with 11 students. So even if one adult were sent home, there's 2 Mount Everett staff, 2 parents, and even if one were to get ill, and again, we'll all be vaccinated and masked anywhere there are other people besides our group. So I think obviously it's not a 0% possibility that anyone would get sick, but it's pretty slim. But yes, they would have to be sent home, as per that's World Strides, Explorica's. Those are their rules.
Does World Strides have staff to augment our chaperones?
There's a person with us. They provide one person, a tour guide for us, who is there with us 24/7 in the hotels and everything. So yes, there would be that additional person as well as our staff or our chaperones.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dennis?
What is the average age of the student that would be going on this? Not the parents, but the students themselves. Let me just tell you why I'm asking. Basically, we know that the vaccination age is going to go down, but it's not down yet. So I'm a little bit concerned about, so what is the average age of those people that are now signed up?
Yeah, so everybody is 16 or older, and everybody has to be, the only one the youngest who I know, the 2 youngest who are, let's see, sophomores this year, but I believe they're 16 anyway, they are vaccinated already, completely vaccinated. Which is a requirement for the trip anyway, for World Strides. They'll have to be vaccinated.
Bonnie?
I really don't like being negative on this because I was so gung ho this trip and no students who applied. But I'm concerned that we have 5 Mount Everett students and we have a number of adults that outnumber our 5 students. And given, the difficulty we have with teachers who might, with any exposure, do the benefits outweigh the risks? And I'm just posing that.
I don't know if that was a question. I mean, I do feel that the benefits at this point will outweigh the risks, and the families of the students have said that they are comfortable with sending the kids. But it is up to you.
I have a question about what legal responsibilities we have should you get into a situation where you cannot get back into the country or there's an outbreak there and regulations change, because it's one thing for the families to be fine with it, but then if we are the fallback responsible party, it puts us in a difficult position. And during this unusual time.
Yeah,
That's my-
I hear you. That's a concern for sure. I would hope that, you know, World Strides would, you know, they have they've been very careful as far as allowing, you know, some countries have opened up and they have not started allowing trips to them until they're sure that it's perfectly safe. But I would assume that they would know a little bit ahead of time if everything was going to shut down immediately. I can ask, you know, I can ask them and get back to you on that.
Thank you. Carrie Ann, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I'm wondering if somebody on the school committee could speak to what the school committee's liability is in this situation if a student were to contract COVID, I mean, or I suppose any illness while they're abroad, what, how that impacts us legally. And then also, is there an emergency plan for, I heard while I was on the phone that people were saying that, oh, if somebody, particularly one of the adults were to become sick, that they would be sent back, but they're not allowed to travel if they're COVID positive. So that wouldn't work as a plan. So I would like to know what the plan is if somebody does get COVID and isn't able to travel, particularly if it's a student, then how would that all work?
Sorry, I'm just reading through what they said, where it says illness on program. Oh, okay. So they would pay for up to $2,000 per participant while they have to quarantine in the country.
Yeah. So we don't have any idea whether that covers the entire cost, because it would have to be the student with an adult chaperone. And then who pays for the rest?
Yeah, it would be the responsibility of the family.
Mm-hmm. Dennis?
I guess my sense of the situation is, to be very frank, that although it's a nice place, the Galapagos Islands are still what most people would classify as a third world country. I think this is definitely not the time to be going to third world countries. So that's where my feelings are.
Mm-hmm. Janelle? Janelle?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks. I just did a quick search. This is just devil's advocate. I'm presenting I just looked up some data for the entire country of Ecuador, and the Galapagos Islands are in the way pale yellow as far as cases right now. And of course, this can change on a dime, as we've seen. But just to let you know, we're in the red, and the hot fiery red. And right now, Ecuador is in the yellow. They have less than 4 cases per 100,000. So I'm sure that will be closely watched as well, to put into your decision making. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Bonnie?
Where are the other 6 students from?
Where are the other students? Well, they are former students. So they were Mount Everett students at the time when the trip was supposed to happen, but they've graduated, and one has transferred to Monument Mountain, but the others have graduated over the past 2 years. So they're in college, and they all have had to get vaccinated as well.
Arthur?
Is there a drop dead date when we can cancel this?
Well,
Okay.
I mean, we really need to decide whether to go forward at this point, in the next couple of weeks. And if it's a no, then we'll move it, we'll bump it to next summer. It's just, I am starting to feel for the families because they're feeling like they pay, and this is nobody's fault at all, obviously. But it's feeling like the trip that never comes, and a lot of people are, even if they bought the trip insurance, they still, if they were going to cancel, they still would lose quite a bit of money at this point. So that's not a reason to, everybody has to make their own decisions as far as that goes. But that's where we're at. That's where the group is at. We were gung ho, almost 2 years ago. So we, at this point, they're still happy to work with us and find a date that works for everyone. But we're at this point, because so many students are in college, our only options now are summer and Christmas vacation, because the college kids don't have the same breaks that we do.
Beth, do you want to weigh in at all on this? No,
I mean, I think I don't want to weigh in. I mean, you asked me to put together a field trip policy for days, and
yeah, at this
I mean, I
point,
totally understand, but I don't think this would be a place that I would want to make a comment.
It's hard to understand, Beth.
I would not want to make a comment. My gut reaction would not be comfortable doing it, but I understand the families. I mean, we haven't even opened up field trips locally yet, so.
What was that last thing? We haven't, what?
We haven't even opened up local field trips here, day trips here. Right now, the district policy, according to the reopening plan, is no field trips. As much as I think it would be amazing to go, I would think that's an amazing place to go. I would love to be going.
yeah. Do we feel like we have enough information so we're ready to vote? I think we don't want to vote with our hearts here. We want to vote with our minds. And one of the big issues is if we have a reopening policy that there are no overnight field trips, then we would have to make a policy change in order not, be serious enough about it to override that policy. So it's not, I don't think feeling badly for the families is what we want to think of. And the kids, of course, we've all been disappointed so many times. But we need to use our rational minds about how we need to behave at this time. That would be my advice. And Danelle and Bonnie. And
I just had a question. Jane, did you say that currently our policy states that we are not doing overnight field trips?
Yes, that's what it says. The reopening plan says we have canceled all overnight field trips.
No, all field trips.
All field trips. And tonight we were going to consider whether kids can go over to Sheffield Center and see an exhibit. So teachers are having to get permission to even take the kids on a bus to a local event.
And is that, was there a date attached to that, or was it just, reassess it further down the road on the policy?
On the reopening plan?
Yeah, on that plan is that we didn't have a date up till November 1st or December 1st or June. I think for this school year, we were thinking.
Right. Well, I mean, it's in place until we change it.
It's in place until we change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Bonnie?
If we were to turn down this request, what is the financial exposure for these 11 students and their families?
Well, they do have the summer off.
Sorry, Bonnie, was that question for me?
Yes, if
I'm
we not approve the trip, what is the financial exposure for these 11 students and their families?
Oh, well, there isn't any extra. I mean, they won't charge any more if we need to move the trip ahead, you know, to next summer or when things are in better condition. So there's no extra financial, you know, burden on families if we don't do it now.
Dennis?
Just to pin you down a little bit more, you're telling me that there's no financial obligation at this point in time, right?
Well, yeah, the trip has been paid for, you know, over a year now. So moving it is not going to, you know, we won't incur any more costs because of moving it. The company has been very good about, you know, making sure that we can make plans when they're going to work for us.
Just as a follow-up, what happens if, because a graduate is whatever, any of these 11 students say, I don't want to do this anymore? And how would they lose, if they have insurance, would they lose any money at all?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they will. Even if you buy, there's like 2 levels of trip insurance, and even if they bought the highest level, there was still some cost, you know, a few $100s. So I don't think most people are gonna do that. I don't really know. I honestly, I don't know if it goes beyond this, if you know, if people will start to say, yeah, no, I'm good, thanks. Like I said, we lost one person, but I don't know that it was, I don't know that it was due necessarily to the fact that we kept you know, the trip kept getting moved up, or it may have been other things. I'm not really sure.
Thank you.
All right, so I think to summarize, my understanding is you have another option for the summer. And so that if we decide that this winter is not a good time, the summer is still open. Is that right? Asha?
Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting. Yes, that's correct. We would figure out when to go, yeah, in the summer, and then, you know, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so are you, I'm thinking that if anybody wants to, oh, I think we have ways to go here. We could table it until the spring, when hopefully things will be better under control. We could vote on it now, go through the motion process. I think I would recommend that you bring it back in the early spring, if that's, unless people want to vote right now.
I think you have to give them a decision because she needs to plan.
Within
Yeah,
2
okay.
weeks, you needed.
Okay, so can I have a motion from somebody on, on this issue?
I move that we ask the trip planners to come back in the spring with a new plan, given different health prospects and security prospects.
So that was Jeffrey on a motion to bring this back in the spring, when the, and I guess the wording is, the rest of the wording is,
When the health metrics and I don't know what the words I want to say. I move that we table this conversation to the spring if data changes towards a more, towards a better situation with COVID.
is there a second to that?
Well, I didn't add it. I had a question before the motion started.
Someone made a second.
Oh, okay,
Danell seconded.
okay. So now Dennis has a question.
How transferable are these, some of these people have actually put money forth.
They paid the whole
They've paid the whole trip.
They paid for the entire trip.
How transferable is that?
It's completely, they can go in the summer, fine.
Right, but I'm saying if, for example, like there are 5 or 6 kids, as I understand it, that aren't even still students here, that they've gone on, they're somewhere else in their lives and so on. Of this group of people that originally invested in this trip, how transferable is it in terms of say, yeah, they may not have bought the top row of the cancellation insurance or whatever, but can they in effect transfer that via some kind of a sales thing to somebody else? Are they transferable?
Yes, actually they could, if they wanted to, they could transfer it to another, like a current student. That is an option. If there's another student who would want to join us in the summer and one of the current students decided, or any of the participants decided they didn't want to go, they could transfer it to another student who did sign up, later, like somebody who's not already signed up and wanted to go, they could sign up. But the other options are, we do have options to do different trips. We could go to Europe. But that has not, when I've asked people, that hasn't been something that they have been interested in, because people mostly just really wanted to go to the Galapagos. So that hasn't been something that people have really entertained. But as time goes on, and we still can't go, then possibly that would be something worth looking at, so that we had a trip. And they can also, individual people can decide to kind of join another trip that's going someplace else if they wanted to. So they could transfer it to another trip with another school or another organization that was going. So there are other options for travelers.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, just based upon that, I'd like to ask Mr. Blaugren if he would accept a change in his motion to make the wording say that we will table this until, as a district, we have decided that we will now open field trips. I mean, right now, we've already, in the past, have said we're not going to do field trips. So instead of trying to guess what the date would be, why not, Jeff, just change your motion to say until, we make a decision to allow field trips.
I'm amenable to that.
And
So if Danell accepts.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'll second that.
All right, are we ready?
Can I just say, you did ask me to bring day field trips
Yes.
today. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Right.
I would like, if you're willing, to make it overnight
Yeah.
field trips, because that differentiates. Are
Sure.
you willing to change it to?
May I restate that we table this until we reinstate overnight out-of-town field trips for discussion.
Got it.
Okay, and
So
Agreed.
Danell has to second that.
Second.
now I'd like to take a roll call vote if everybody's clear about what that motion is. Anybody need it restated? Okay, Laura,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Carrie Ann,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Jane, yes, and Bonnie.
Yes.
All right. We really hope this works out. Thank you for your perseverance on this project. It must not be very fun.
It's been an interesting ride, but thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so now we are going to go on to item 7B, which is a vote to increase the substitute teacher rate from $92.50 to $110 per day for uncertified teachers with a college degree, and from 110 to 128 for certified teachers. Do I have
So
a
moved.
motion?
So moved.
Second,
That was Jeffrey's move and Bonnie seconded. Is there any discussion? Dennis?
Yes, I had a question. How did these numbers come about?
So,
What's the background on these particular set of numbers that we're talking about?
so what you have in front of you is what I had proposed to the school committee 2 years ago for substitute rates, and I had done an extensive polling of neighborhood districts, and we had raised our sub rate above everybody else's because we were struggling to get subs. And I know you find that shocking, but right now we are struggling to find subs. And so when we did, I had Lynette make those same calls again and go to local districts, and lo and behold, they went up above us. So this is just bringing us in line so that we can be competitive to have subs in the building when we need them.
So are you saying that these are exactly the same numbers that you brought forth a couple of years ago, or these are changed a little
You
bit?
can see the change, right? It went from 92.50 to 110 in that category, and 110 to 128.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Jeffrey?
I just want to confirm this is a daily rate.
Yeah, it's not an hour.
then.
Because
What?
it's not an hourly rate because I'm going to quit and be a sub.
Just wanted to confirm.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll take them. We have a motion,
Yeah, we
Jeffrey
do.
and Bonnie, so let's vote. Bonnie,
Yes,
Arthur,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes,
Laura,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Ariane,
Yes.
Jane, yes, that's unanimous. For that vote, we're going on to item C, an MCAS update.
Okay, so we're gonna pull up a PowerPoint. Okay, so we wanted to bring to you at this time, we have the MCAS results, and I believe at the end of this week, we'll be mailing out the the results to families, which is normal. I want to thank Julie put together the PowerPoint, and I am going to do my best to deliver with some help from anybody here who wants to join in. So I wanted to talk a little, the one thing about this district that I've always really appreciated is we have an understanding in this district that the MCAS is one assessment in time, and we don't make it the only assessment and the only focus of what we do, but it does allow us a data point to see where our students are performing with the standards. As we all know, the MCAS data has been, it's behind. So it's a hard tool to use because students have already moved on to the next grade, but we'll take any data point we can get. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we move through. I think it's important to have some kind of a standardized test. I would just stand on my soapbox a little bit and say, I'd like to see it take up less time than it does as part of the year, but right now it is what it is. So what changed for the oh, next slide, thank you. But yes, she's moving forward. Great. So what changed with the MCAS in 2021? So instead of the students in grades 3 through 8 were randomly assigned one session out of the regular 2 sessions of the test in ELA, math, and science, technology, and engineering. They were, those who were learning remotely could take their computer-based tests at home, and except grade 10, which was 2-session in-school test. Next slide. So this is really important, and I'm sure people probably saw the press release from the Commissioner of Education and talking about this, but we're going to kind of put what's happening into relatable terms. We're gonna pick out the important pieces. So they talked about, should we be comparing our MCAS results with to each other, to ourselves, and to other districts? And there was a lot going on. Obviously, we have the pandemic factor that has been added on to. We actually changed even how the results were reported and how accountability ratings happened right around either the year before or right as the pandemic was on us. So it's going to be really, really hard to measure, to do comparisons to the data that we had. And then they're actually just encouraging us not to compare to other districts because everybody had their own unique situations going on during COVID. Next slide. So we used to talk about the student growth percentage as a way to measure our results. And the question is out there is, has the growth calculation changed as a result of the pandemic? And the answer to that is yes. It was previously calculated by comparing students' current year score to that of students with similar scores in their cohort. So now each year that cohort changed. And so depending on the performance, that resulted in a state average of about 50% as the student growth, kind of as that benchmark of about 50. So in 2021, they had the MCAS Technical Advisory Committee, and they decided to calculate student growth percentage differently using a historical academic peer group. The historical peer group represents a baseline from which current progress is measured over time. So this allows it to be a little bit more of a sensitive and realistic measure when you're dealing with a pandemic type situation. So that kind of changed that calculation. Okay, let's talk about. So how did the 2021 MCAS results factor into the accountability results for this year and future school years? So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has decided not to issue updated district and school accountability determinations in the fall of 2021. The commissioner again has decided not to name any new underperforming schools. And the department is actively reviewing options for accountability reporting in 2022 and beyond. You can go out. I spent a lot of time on the district report card for the last 3 years as part of my research, and that is available if you go on DESE, and you can take a look at our report card. Is probably sitting back at 2019, right? 2019 is the last report card. The school committee has always been very interested, so I appreciate Julie putting this into the PowerPoint on how this affects a qualification for the John and Abigail Adams scholarships. So students who were in grade 11 in the spring of 2021, so the class of 2022, were able to take the grade 10 ELA and mathematics tests on a voluntary basis in an effort to qualify for the scholarship. Students in the class of 2022 who missed the spring test opportunity may take the November retest or the March retest to qualify instead. So there's still going to be an opportunity for students to receive that scholarship. Education Week had this really uplifting statistic. One recent study indicates a 70% learning loss among students over the past year, depending on individual schools and learners. So that's just loaded with fun. So let's have some graphics. I think everybody feels the same. These are hard to look at, and but we're actually not surprised. the expectations are, and were that we were going to see some significant loss, and we have across the board. And even though it said not to peak, I have peaked everywhere, and it's everywhere. It's not just in this district. So this particular graphic is showing the 2021 ELA MCAS achievement levels by grade.
For the state.
For the state, correct.
These are not ours.
Right.
Oh.
So you can see that where that blue line is, right,
Yeah,
is
that's where in 2019,
every-
anything above the blue line in 2019 for the state would have been meeting or exceeding. So that you can just see the amount of loss. Or not, in 10th grade, you know, even with COVID, the state pretty much held their own.
which is typical. I mean, 10th
Yeah.
grade, the test scores are
Mhm.
usually like that anyway.
Right.
So, but even there, that bar is down there, you know, to the lower end of that. On the next slide, it shows the same for the state and for mathematics. And we'll put this PowerPoint up so you have time to really digest it and take a look at it on your own. I know this is a lot and you got to really dig in and take a look at it, but we wanted to at least put that information out there for people to look at. I think math, just in general, the commissioner came out when he came out in his report, there was learning loss everywhere, but math was significant across the state and the nation as well. Okay, and then we put in, these are our results, right?
Yeah, these are
So
our
this
results
is-
compared to the state.
Correct. So you
This
can,
is 10th grade.
yes. So there's lots of different ways to look at this, and one of the things that the faculty and staff have been doing during our professional development is really digging into this data and taking a look at specifics and you know, moving towards figuring out where we can start to attack the learning loss. I really don't enjoy that term, but it is what it is. So so you can see what our numbers are here, and people are working really hard to start addressing that. So the next slide will be showing our 10th grade results in,
This is 3rd grade.
I'm so sorry, I can't even read my own writing. And 3 through 8. So you had the 10th grade, and now you have the 3 through 8 versus the state. So Southern Berkshire versus the state. And that's going to take some time to dig apart, you know, dig into a little bit and look at that. But the teachers have already started and are really engaged in taking a look at that data. The most important slide to me is the next one. I mean, I think it's important to look at this and use this data, but you know, we all know what kind of state we were in last year. And again, we anticipated this, not only this, but we knew where we needed to do work. And this has been part of our district improvement plan. And it could not be more timely, because these are the steps that we have started to take to address whether or not it's MCAS or, you know, just improving the educational experience for students across the board. This is what we need. So some of the action steps we already have put into place, and you'll see these with more specifics in our presentation of our district improvement plan and subsequently our school improvement plans. But we're starting with those social emotional supports, right? When we did the presentation in August, was it August or September, on the accelerated learning plan and how we were going to recover from the state. We know it starts with the social emotional supports and making sure that kids feel safe, ready, healthy, and engaged, so that they can engage in learning. We've talked a lot about this, but we are just finding having great results with our Fast Bridge benchmark assessment tool. We knew a while ago we didn't want to wait for MCAS results to help us inform our instructional decisions. So we've been administering these much more regularly and using that to make those changes and address the learning gaps. It's allowed us to think about different strategies, to order different materials, and it's really encouraging excellent conversations across the district. Our faculty and staff meeting time was completely reimagined. We blew the whole schedule up. We shared that with you in the beginning of the year. Instead of having, full faculty meetings and department meetings, we've broken those out, and so that the teachers have time to work together collaboratively. And they have time at grade level so that they can look at data and again, work on what needs to be done to address student needs. We've instituted a process for selecting high quality materials that support the standards. And we started with the math program, and that's where we've been investing a lot of time and resources. And it's been really exciting as we've been going into the classrooms and seeing just where kids are and finding different ways to address each kid's specific. It's almost personalized to help them grow from wherever point they're at, and that's really exciting. We are providing a lot of professional development and support, just like to support the accelerated learning. We had a lot of tools from the state as well, so that was great. We have really created an elementary schedule that has those scaffolds that we talked about for the just-in-time learning and opportunities for small group interventions. We had lots of talks as we look at this data and even our benchmark data from FastBridge about rethinking possibly what we have as a schedule for a secondary, because the reality is there's not enough time to do what you need to do. With even these math programs or ELA to move students in sometimes a short block. So we have to think about what that might look like. And we instituted late buses and after school homework center, we're calling it, or after school tutoring options. We're trying to hit this from all angles and support students wherever they might need it. So I feel I don't think anybody, any administrator or superintendent is really excited about coming in front of school committees or families and saying anything about the results, but again, it's a point in time, and I think we have an excellent plan as to how to continue to meet our students where they are and move them forward, and that's what's important. So any questions you might be able to answer?
Sorry, Bonnie?
I love the instant translation.
Oh, that's pretty.
I keep that on all the time.
Yeah.
Presentation mode.
Absolutely wonderful.
I wouldn't have done that, but she has it on her computer for that.
So are the
thank
people
you.
at home
Now-
seeing that too?
Yes,
Now, when this is posted,
we usually, we can translate. And the meeting will, the recording will have it.
wonderful, wonderful. So how soon can we, just a couple of things weren't that clear. How
Yeah,
soon can we
it will be
see?
posted tomorrow. Once I deliver a
Okay.
PowerPoint or any of the reports, the whole packet goes up on the website.
Website, great, thank you.
So I see Carrie Ann's hand and then Laura.
Thank you. Thank you for this great presentation, and please pass on that it was very interesting, and I look forward to being able to look at it longer to understand some of those graphs a little bit better. But I'm wondering, thinking about, there was the one point on the action slides of continuing future scheduling options, and it made me think about, are there any opportunities, or what are the opportunities now to be thinking about building out a summer program that might be also a support in terms of an action plan? And how can we, as thinking also about the finance committee and the budget, what are the ways that we can start allocating resources for that type of a programming? Because I know that this summer, that there was summer programming, but it was only for specific students. And I'm really hoping that we can find a way to open that up to all of our students, and especially in terms of addressing some of this learning loss.
I mean, I think all of those things are on the table, but I think when you talk about scheduling options and actually there's a session at the, I was just talking about it, there is a scheduling opportunity at the conference, the MASC in November that I've already circled to attend on behalf. And I think it depends. It depends on, you know, where your staff is and their current certifications. And if in the event the way that we're structured, because we're small, is there's a lot of overlap, right, between especially in the secondary with middle school and high school teachers teaching multiple levels, which makes it a little bit harder to do. But we're going to think about, we have to think about all of that and think about what resources might have to be allocated if we were going to make a schedule that might require more time in specific coursework. So that will be part of what we're addressing when we come forward with a budget, right? So we're having those conversations now, thinking through what resources we might need, because scheduling is quite it's not as simple as people think. It's pretty in-depth, and you really have to come up with what your best strategy is. So we're just having those conversations based on the data that we have. So, and as far as summer, I think it's the same thing. I think we have to see what kinds of resources are available to us. You know, how many people we're going to be able to get to staff it. You know, I know people are tired of hearing me say it, but it's hard to, sometimes people really just look forward to having some downtime, and if we can get the staffing to do it, that's amazing. So it is all in the plan. We're hoping to offer whatever we can to as many people as we can, but we're going to move through this kind of thinking about what kinds of ways can we look at this? What do we really need? Start to think about that in the budgeting process and work it through. So it's a lot, but we're going to tackle it with everything else as we move through the cycle. I don't have 100% answer right now.
Great. Well, thank you. And to share with some of the committee members who weren't able to be on the legislative call that the MASC had on Monday, one of the messages from Smitty Pignatelli, the question was asked of like, what else do school committees need to know? And he was very specific in saying that this is a really good time to be thinking outside of the box and to be coming up with funding proposals for those outside of the box ideas, because of the influx of funding that's coming in through state channels for different types of projects. So I think it's an important thing for us to be considering, to just while we are figuring out our budget, but also figuring out a wish list of what we would like to have happen for when these other funding opportunities open up. Thank you.
Laura and then Danelle.
Thank you. I just had a basic question about the accountability slide. I'm also going to circle back and digest that whole presentation later. But in terms of accountability results, it sounds like they're sort of suspended for this year, if I'm understanding correctly. What are typically the implications of those accountability results? Is it like directly correlated to funding, or?
For the last couple of years, since 2019, we've been held in the same category, so it hasn't really affected any of that. Again, it's a tool, right? It's a tool for us to use to see how our students are doing at one point in time. So they haven't related it to funding yet. Now, it depends, you know, where you land. You could be eligible for some additional resources, or, you know, there's districts who have ended up as in receivership. You know, there's a gamut of options, and then there's those that are, you know, model schools. So We haven't had those ratings really move since 2019. We're kind of all in this zone. So I think right now, if that's not affecting our funding. I can't say it never will, but right now they haven't tied anything to funding.
And Danelle?
Yeah, thank you. This is just an idea, a comment, and it's kind of piggybacking on what Carrie Ann brought up about summer programming to kind of help fill in the gaps. What about, just putting it out there before waiting until summer for programs? If there are any tutoring groups or like peer-led study groups or get-togethers with maybe the older kids with it, getting them together with the younger kids to try to quote unquote tutor. I know I've heard of a lot of parents asking for tutoring help after school to try to help their kids catch up. So that's just, it's kind of along the same lines as the summer programs, but maybe if there's something we could do earlier than that to try to facilitate something.
I mean, we're looking at all sorts of ideas. Again, it's about right now, even just trying to get homework center staffed is really tricky. We're trying everything. We're open to anything. We're trying everything. We are still, finding other activities. There are quite a few activities going on at the elementary, and of course, there's the theater and sports in the secondary, as well as a homework tutoring kind of opportunity after school. So there are things in place, but we are talking about some additional either enrichment or ways to enhance learning and make up some learning loss in the form, either if it's going to be a club or some type of after school activity. We're tossing around lots of different ideas.
Fine.
What was the participation rate of our students at the different levels for the MCAS?
It was good. We were 98%
All the way through.
Yeah, we didn't have any
Yeah, we
low
didn't.
participation.
100%, 10%, 8%.
That's great, but you're reading great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, that wasn't an issue for us
Participation was not a problem at all.
last year.
Good. But we have had years.
We have,
where
yeah.
It's an issue.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So
I just had a quick question to the superintendent. Basically, at the start of COVID, a family member who has a child in district, had a discussion with me regarding one of the problems that had broken down in the relationship between, the MASC, the MCATs and the Adams scholarships. That basically there used to be a relationship that if you were interested in keeping your child in a higher level of education within the Commonwealth of Mass, in some of the public colleges and so forth, that there was a favorable relationship between the two, which seemed to disappear during the time of COVID-19. And I have been unable to find out any information about whether that is going back to becoming a better relationship or not. And I don't want to take up this meeting but are you aware of any changes? Because I've been unable to find out any information about these issues.
No, I think the entire time, I haven't heard anybody say anything other than this is still going to be an available option. They were just trying to figure out how to make it work when you're doing modifications, but I haven't really heard that there's a breakdown in any. I didn't get that from them. They were just trying to figure out how they were going to administer it in this situation and think about how they were going to do accountability and like I said, the way they were even the system for accountability had just changed right before COVID. So
Right.
there was a lot of that, right? Even figuring out how to compare prior to where they were. So it, I think that was priority, and then they were gonna figure out how they could still have those benefits. So I don't have any recollection that there was a breakdown between the two organizations.
The
Let me say
main
that.
impact is on the current seniors.
I'm sorry.
The main impact is on the current seniors, the class of 2022.
Yeah, that was something what it was more about.
Right, and that's the slide that Beth had up earlier about the opportunities for students to take the test, even though they don't have to graduate, to take the test in order to qualify for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. So the opportunities are there. So, but now students have to
do that. They have
opt
to-
in
they
to
have to
do
take
that.
it, yeah.
I don't want to hold up
Yeah,
this
okay.
meeting anymore. on-
We'll
on
make
that, but
sure
I'll have to
that
dig
that
into
gets
it a
dealt
little bit more.
Okay,
Maybe.
all right, great. Okay, so the next item, I think we finished that discussion, has to do with discussion of student immunizations that was brought up in the public comment at our last meeting by a teacher. And it's obviously on everybody's minds. And Beth and I and others on the committee, I'm sure, are watching how this is unfolding in other districts and giving us guidance into how we might proceed. And Beth probably can express the information better. I got it secondhand, but I did look in our current policy for vaccinations. And it states that we work with our boards of health to find out which immunizations we need to require. And it does have the statement about, and it doesn't list the current ones, but it does state that other immunizations can be added. So if we're going to follow policy, we need to look at the policy and work with our boards of health. And I think that's what Beth will be reporting on, has been the protocol for other districts adding COVID-19 vaccinations to their list of requirements.
Well, I mean, of course, I got what everybody else got, and they heard that Amherst, is it the Amherst Pelham Regional was the first. I think it was picked up on the Boston news stations around having a vaccination requirement and for students. And so I wanted to, because as we all know, right, whatever is reported out, there's always those underlying details that no one really calls up and gets. So I called Dr. Morris directly. And he was lovely and was got right on the phone with me Friday afternoon and shared with me his process. And they started with their policy. He hopped right on and looked at our policy versus his policy and was, happy to share resources. And really what happened is that their policy, which he shared, specifically addresses the immunizations required under both Chapter 76, Section 15, saying, this is what your immunization policy is, but they list out which ones have to be, which ones your child has to have in order to attend a school in Amherst Pelham. So with that in mind, it's kind of under the same language as everybody else's, which says, in conjunction with your public health officials, you want to know, we all want to know, is the recommendation going to be from public health that they add the COVID-19 vaccination to that list? So what they did, and this is really what their process was to write to the boards of health and ask that very question and have them weigh in on what they thought. The boards of health debated, and I believe in that district it was 9-0, that was in the article. It was 9-0 that they were going to recommend once the vaccination was, FDA, fully FDA approved. That was the language that was used in their discussions, that they would add it to the list of vaccinations to and have that be a requirement to attend school in Amherst Pelham. So then, and as of right now, right, we have, I think, Pfizer, which is going to be the closest one. So I think in the article, if I remember correctly, I don't know if I have that here, but I think they're saying by December 1 that they would have the 16 and up be required to be vaccinated. I think that's what they ended on. So that came back to the school committee, and then the school committee debated on whether or not to change their policy and make that addition upon the recommendation of public health. So that was something I thought could be a way we could consider moving forward. And I then subsequently saw Cambridge. I was sent the Cambridge document. They had some different requirements. They said that you can attend school there, you know, without getting the vaccination, but if you want to participate in any extracurriculars, you needed to be vaccinated. So, you know, people are applying different strategies, but again, I think it's still the same. It's still when it's fully FDA approved and there's an appropriate, you know, age limitation. They all have different recommendations. And the reality of it, as I was talking to Dr. Morris, is it's going to be some time, right, before that really happens, because we're really only talking about 16 and up. So when we're talking about younger students and families, it might be a little bit longer before we get there. They're not anticipating until the spring, I believe. You know, I'm sure the medical professionals can weigh in more than me, but that's where they're anticipating. So we do have some time to look at our policies and go forward. I don't know if that helps anybody.
Yeah, Dennis?
Yeah, I did a little work on this week, and basically, like, according to the Massachusetts Department of Health, all of that lies in their domain. That they basically, it's the Department of Health, not DESE, that makes a determination on what are the things that have to be immunized, you know, for a child to become, you know, in a public school.
Right. It's not,
And they
it's not
basically said that they don't have that worked out. They basically said, but it's there. You know, it's not a local option that you make the decision. They said that is a Massachusetts Department of Health decision, period. Yeah, and I mean, back to that, they said all the way back to the point where if you don't follow that rule, you're in violation of the actual Constitution. I don't know. But that's, they were very strong about it.
When you say they
being the Massachusetts Department of Health,
okay,
the local health officials, nor do school committees have that right to say, do that. According to the Mass Department of Health. You know,
well, I will say, the language, and I'm looking at the language that was used in the letters. They are local boards of health. They are recommendations.
Mhm.
You know, they're, I guess it kind of goes back to what I would say also, is what those who are participating last night and have talked about is that they don't feel like we're going to get a state level recommendation. And my understanding is, and I think, I can't remember if it was the commissioner or somebody who said, I know it's not theirs, but they were saying they feel like it's not going to be made at the governor level, at the state level, it's
Right,
going
that
to be
was
made locally. There's a lot of different forums that have been saying that. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know, personally, I'm not saying I know the answer to if that can be upheld or not, but that is what that is what these two districts in Massachusetts who have passed something, that is what they're basing it on. They're basing it on the recommendation that came from public health officials locally, and then the school committee, you know, discussing whether they would like to add that to their list.
So these people guided me to the pieces of code that basically say, here's how, you know, the things appear on the list. And they basically say that is all driven by the State Department of Public Health. That is not a local decision. on
Well,
what,
once again, what I really
what you have to
enjoy
be immunized.
is this, because I
Yeah.
feel like this whole job for 2 years has been this. So I don't know, all I can do is give you the information. Legal has seen both of these. You know, I'm just trying to provide you so that you don't have to do anything with any of it. It's just, I want people to understand what's going on behind these things, because sometimes people see a headline and say, why aren't you doing this? There's a lot of stuff behind that that you have to know about. And I didn't want people to think that we're ignoring it or we're not interested in any of that. So that was my point for sharing.
Yeah. I was at the MASC legislative meeting where it's pretty clear that we're not getting top-down guidance that we really need. And that's just the way this governor wants to operate, and he does have control, I would assume, about over his Department of Mental Health, and so he's not going to encourage blanket Department of Health. He's not going to encourage a blanket mandate. So we don't know whether any mandate that we would make would be challenged, but other schools are going forward with the assumption that they have the authority to work with their local public health. And we have to wait and see if parents are going to challenge that. But I don't know that we have to tie our hands are not necessarily tied, even though at the state level, we're not getting the support that we want. But I do think I'm going to entertain some discussion on this.
I will say, you know, Dr. Morris did share that, you know, even though they felt strongly about these recommendations, they realized that there's a lot of time and that this could change, right? The Department of Health could say, and that was part of the reason for doing it. If they're supporting it, but it's a ways off, you know, there's still some time.
Yeah, I think the issue of whether it's legal to deny a child entrance into a school for not having a vaccine that is not mandated by the state could be tricky, but that doesn't mean we stop in our tracks here. So I see Jeffrey and then Carrie Ann.
Thank you. Beth, thanks for providing the stories with Amherst Pelham and Cambridge. That was helpful. In the spirit of what Ms. Steinauer and Ms. Drown, I believe was the second person from public comment, I agree we should be very proactive now in anticipation for whatever might be coming down from the state or not from the state, and understanding that. To Dennis's point of, you know, he was doing research, if you could provide us some citing of what that statute is, I think that would be helpful. And then I'd say we should probably, before the next meeting, reach out to council and say, like, look, we want to know what is the third rail, what is potentially the risk that we're looking at in any of the decisions that we move forward, and if there's guidance that they have. And I think that it is reasonable with what Beth is saying with the other school districts of reaching out to the public health jurisdictions within our school towns makes a lot of sense to get their qualified statement on the record. So
I think that Beth has had a preliminary talk with our council. Did you want to, is there anything to report there?
I don't think yet, because again, really, these are all very new. So
Yeah,
I think
okay.
we're just going to gather information. I mean, it was his, you know, our council wanted to know the same things we wanted to know. What are the details behind the headline, right? Let's talk about how we're really implementing this. And it, even though there's a headline, doesn't mean that it's happening tomorrow. And there's some back work that we need to do. So I think it's important to have these discussions and to keep, I think it's really important to involve our public health officials. They've been really helpful and get their and I think they were weighing in, I think they said they had a meeting on the 26th. Is anybody on here? I think if they said they're meeting on the 26th to talk about some of this as well. So I think this may, if we were to ask them what their thoughts were on a recommendation at some point, that might get it on their agenda.
Okay, Mary Ann?
Thank you. Just a few points. One is that right now, students that are 12 and over are eligible for the vaccine. So I'm a little confused as to why the age 16 got thrown in there. And some of these, we've already created a vaccine mandate for some, because people get to choose about which vaccine they get, and not all of the vaccines are approved by the FDA at this point. So we're bringing in some confusion into our conversation that I just want to straighten out a little bit, and to a little bit to the next point, that we do need as a school committee to have strong guidance from health officials on these conversations. And I think it's really important that, backing up what Jeffrey was saying, that we are proactive in this. And I would like to see that the policy subcommittee go have a subcommittee meeting to start drafting what a policy would look like for all of our students. Thank you.
Carrie Ann, I've already been in touch with Dennis to do just that, so you should expect a meeting to be called very soon. Janelle?
Beth, thank you, and thanks for getting in touch with the superintendent of Amherst Schools. Did they provide any? Did he provide any insight to you as far as what they had gone through as far as legal counsel consulting?
I think what they did is exactly what I said. I don't know that, again, I think, other than the 12 and up, when you're talking about the younger children, 5 and they're not anticipating that to be available till the spring. So he's, his thought was, we might not even be talking about the younger children until the next school year, and thinking through what that might mean. When one of the discussions that we had was, what does that look like if people don't feel comfortable with that, and for districts, and what might, they're not a big district either, and they're talking about, what are those numbers going to look like, and what does that mean for smaller districts? It's something to think about. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing it, but I think we'd want to be thinking about creating, like, in that instance, would you want to think about creating a remote academy? I don't know. I have no idea what this is going to look like long term, right?
Well, and as far as, did he, because right now for the article, they had already approved that the vaccine be mandated for kids, what was it, 16?
I know, I understand. Yeah, that it was only for them, it was 16 and up. And the Pfizer fully approved, that was their particular language.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure they worked with council on.
Right. Is it, I would love to go through the Board of Health as well. I think it's an added bonus to have behind us. I guess, well, now that Jane said that the subcommittee meeting for policy is in the works, I just want to make sure that the ball is rolling and keeps rolling, and going through Board of Health, I would love to get that on their agenda to see if, the vaccine is mandated for 16, or not mandated, FDA approved for 16 and up. What more do we need to make that a mandate for our kids now?
Yeah, so I think the charge of the policy subcommittee is to look at our current policy, which states that we work with our boards of health establish the required vaccination. So if we're not gonna do that anymore, that would have to be changed, but in light of the fact that that's been our policy before, our next item is about a liaison to the public health team from the school committee to keep us updated. And I'd love to, when we get to that, make sure that somebody's at the October 26th meeting, and that person can then report to the policy subcommittee, and that'll make it less clunky about how we communicate with each other so we can get it expedited. And we're not planning on tossing this back and forth for months and months. We can be very agile about getting it accomplished. So I would really hope that our next meeting is on the 21st. That's before that public health meeting, but it's possible that we could be in communication, the policy subcommittee members, somebody can invite a member of that body to come to the policy subcommittee or supply us with some information so we're not stalled.
So I don't want to misspeak. Just,
Yeah,
I want to, no, I'm just saying, the 26th, according to, I believe, Amy Hart, who was on last night, is the public health. I don't know if that's an open meeting. The public health team meetings that the team that I created is what we're talking about, they come to us, they meet with us.
Okay, so
And that's our local, and I was thinking that's where the school
Okay.
committee member would be advisory.
okay, so can we set up those dates ourselves? I mean, can we say we'd like to have a meeting with you at such and such time, or do you already have them?
We
set
have
up?
a standing monthly meeting, and usually we try to do it before a school committee meeting so we can give updates.
Okay, so we'll get that squared away. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
But I mean, it might be open, I don't know the answer to that, those were the meetings I think we were talking about, but,
Can you find that out for us? If that's an open meeting?
I suppose. I mean, to me, what we should be doing is writing a letter asking them to put that on their agenda. You know, I think to authorize one of us to say, we would like to get your recommendation on whether or not to add the COVID. I mean, I think that's where we should go right now.
Yeah, okay.
At the very least, at least that would keep the ball rolling, I think, which is what people are interested in.
Okay, so let's talk about putting together a motion to authorize a letter be sent to local Board of Health advising us on a mandate for COVID vaccination.
Is that, you mean
So moved.
all from local?
Yes, everybody.
Yeah.
So it's, you're asking for a motion for a letter to all 5 of our local boards of health to advocate for a vaccination ruling.
To obtain a recommendation as to whether or not we should add the COVID.
Vaccination, that's the ruling. Okay, so I can make a motion that we write to all 5 boards of health to obtain, ask them to provide a ruling to guide the school district in adding COVID-19 vaccination to the list of mandated vaccinations.
Can we,
I'm gonna read that back. I'm hearing, Danila, you trying to say something?
oh, Carrie Ann had her hand up first. Go ahead.
You were first.
Oh, I was first. It just,
Wait. We have a motion that's being formed on the floor, so I think probably the best thing to do is to understand what this motion is and see if there's a second for it, and then we can make amendments to it or discuss it. Rather than.
That would be
having-
fine with me, but I can't hear the motion. So it would be really helpful if it seems that right now both Jane and Beth have the positioning with the owl to be speaking the clearest. So if you're able to read it back, that would be great.
I've got it, what Bonnie just said. I move to authorize to send letters to all 5 boards of health to provide a ruling to guide school about adding COVID-19 vaccination to the list of mandated vaccinations.
Second.
Okay, so now we have a second from Art. That was put forward by Bonnie, and then if there's discussion about amending it in some way.
I would like to suggest that we take out the word ruling. We're not looking for a ruling from the boards of health. We are looking for their input. And that to be very clear about that we are asking of this are we looking for it from all 5 towns or just Sheffield? And when do we want their input by?
Okay, so you're looking at the word ruling be changed to a recommendation about.
I thought you wanted a ruling.
No, I don't. I'm not, it's not my motion, so I think if we feel like ruling sounds to be the wrong word, we need a recommendation. That's sort of semantics.
Just maybe it's semantics, but a ruling then seems like then we're boxing ourselves into, if they say no, their ruling is no, then we can't move forward on it. So as opposed to a recommendation, it gives us the freedom to be able to take into consideration their information, because it's a recommendation, not a ruling.
Well, in the past, we have followed their guidance. So if they make a ruling and we decide their guidance is no longer our choice, then we would have to change our policy not to follow what our Board of Health says, in my opinion.
The understanding is that, I believe, from speaking with Dr. Morris, that what they understood it is the district and the school committee implement public health policy. So that's why it's in that vein. So they asked for a recommendation that the COVID vaccine be included as a requirement in attending their schools. So that was what they initially went, and they also wanted, they thought it would be helpful to see whether that requirement should include all eligible children or only those old enough to take a vaccine that has been fully approved by the FDA. That's what they asked the Board of Health for. Boards of health.
Yeah, so this would go to all boards of health.
But what Beth said would mean I need to change the motion. Because if you repeat what you're saying is each Board of Health would provide a recommendation, and what was the wording you had right after that?
They met as a regional group, right? So that like they also have multiple towns and the
Right.
regional people. So their collaborative meeting, like our collaborative meeting, I
Right.
believe is on the 26th with our group. They took it under advisement and came out 9-0 at the Board of Health. So all of those local boards of health.
But they included that it be a vaccine that had been totally FDA
Yeah,
approved.
They did ask if it should be fully FDA approved, and that's what they came out with in their recommendation.
Okay, so we should consider whether we want to put that into our motion.
Okay.
Janelle, I think.
Janelle,
Yeah, I think Bonnie, you had the right idea with the motion. I just think it could be chiseled down to be a little bit easier, more concise. And I think what Beth said just now was perfect. You know,
Yes.
the motion to write a letter to the boards of health requesting that they add the COVID-19 vaccine, which has been FDA approved for children as a requirement for attending school.
And I think the only thing you left out of that is we're asking for their recommendation.
We're asking them to recommend that the COVID vaccine be added to the list of required vaccinations for kids, the ages, the FDA requirement, all that stuff.
Right. I'd be more than happy to accept, Janelle, your changes.
Okay, Art, are you happy to do that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Then
Now,
it says number 2.
No taking.
Yeah,
I actually have it right
okay. I suppose,
there. If you like it, I have it right there. All right, go ahead.
Perfect.
yeah, you want to read it, so then we can.
No, it's a long document, but the point is that I'd like to make is that I think before we do what we're about to do, is we should definitely nail down and verify. You know, we don't want to get the towns involved in something and their officials to basically say, give us your input. If somebody else turns around and basically says, yeah, but they don't have that right. Only the Massachusetts State Board of Health has the right to say what can be used to limit whether or not the kid can come into school, period.
Yeah.
And basically, they're, you know, the conversations I had with them were reasonable and nice, and they're basically saying, what they're basically saying is, we don't really know which way this is going to go.
Mhm.
You know, they kind of used the story of what happened with masks as something that probably is how this may or may not happen, which was that, you know, the masks became a quote political problem.
Mhm.
And the governor was the guy that said, okay, you know, let them blame it all on me. And it became a quote mask mandate. This is in that class of activity.
Yeah, well, I think.
So I think the first thing that we ought to do is resolve whether or not what they were telling me is right. Because otherwise, we're saying if we do something different, you know, on our own, then we are in effect creating our own liability.
Well, again, it's just a recommendation, so you could ask this question and not be able to use it, but I'm just
Right.
looking here at the footnote in the document you're sharing. I'll talk with legal tomorrow, if you don't mind, I'll share.
Oh,
the-
yeah, no, I mean.
But it says, like-
Get them to run it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
They're
right,
saying this is their call.
well, I'm just saying,
Okay.
right here in the
Is it or
footnote,
isn't it?
I would ask the question, because it says in the footnote, address questions about enforcement with your legal counsel. School requirements are enforced at the local level. So once again, I feel like we're doing a little, you know, so I'll see what I can find out about that, but I don't think that precludes people from asking for a recommendation. That doesn't mean you're going to do anything with it. You know, I mean, again, that came back and went to the school committees for a vote, you know, so you have time. Doesn't mean they can't weigh in on what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I think in order to be timely about this, I think our first step is to work with our local boards of health, because that's what we've done before. At the same time, looking into, I would assume that their mandate, their policies are based on the state requirements, and it may take longer for the state to come up with requirements than we would like. But I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So we're not gonna do anything, we're gonna vet this, but this is typical of our going around in circles. I apologize to our minute taker, just so that we can get a clear motion that we can vote on. And it seems like the language that Beth used was agreeable to most people. And Bonnie,
I think, given the language, that in no way precludes what you're speaking about. So
But I
two
will find out.
paths to hopefully a faster conclusion.
Right, exactly. Parallel path.
Mhm.
All right, so. The motion is currently.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Mhm.
Okay. We are going to write a letter to the local boards of health to inquire about their plans to recommend that the COVID-19 vaccines be included as a requirement of attending school in Southern Berkshire Regional School District. If such a requirement is recommended, we would also want to know whether the requirement should include all eligible children or only those old enough to take a vaccine that has been fully approved by the FDA.
Okay,
It's not my reading, so.
all
my
right, so that's now Bonnie's motion, and
Yes.
Art approves it, and those
Can I-
changes.
It was hard to hear. Can you just confirm, Beth, that you said boards of health, like plural, or just one board of health? So all 5.
All of
All
them,
boards of health.
regional,
Okay,
everybody,
thank you.
anybody who wants to weigh in.
Okay, so now I'm gonna take a vote, because I don't see any other hands up. Bonnie,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Danelle,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Carrie Ann,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Bonnie.
You started with
I
me.
started with you,
Yeah.
Jane, yes, you get 2 votes. All right, and I want you to know that simultaneously, the policy subcommittee will get organized, will get this letter out right away, and hopefully in 2 weeks, when we come back, we're gonna have some good information for everybody to, yeah.
Why do you have to wait for a policy subcommittee to write the letter? Oh,
No, no, no,
Oh, okay.
no. The letter's gonna go out ASAP.
Okay.
Who's going to write the letter?
That was,
Well, I'm happy to write the letter based on the letter that was sent out by, you'd have to authorize me to do it unless somebody else wants to volunteer, but I have the model letter that the Amherst, school committee sent to their boards of health, and it seems to me, having read it, that it's reasonable.
I motion that the school committee authorizes the chair to write the letter, and should she want another set of eyes to review the letter, I'm sure she could turn to any of us.
I'll second.
That's the second, so there's a motion to authorize the chair to write the letter to the board of health. And and the chair may ask for help from any member to review it before it goes out. And the second is from Dennis. Any further discussion on that? All right. So Laura,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Mel,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Carrie Ann,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jane, yes. Okay, under normal circumstances, I might be giving this to the public school advocacy subcommittee to do, but I know you've got a project on your plate, and I don't want to distract you from that, so I'm willing to do it. All right. So we're on our way with,
And it's 8 o'clock already.
yeah, okay, and I do want to expedite the meeting, so I'm going to go on to item E, and it was brought up at a previous meeting about having an ad hoc advisory committee on COVID, and I'm putting out a second option of having a liaison from the school committee to the public health team meetings so that we have direct information as Beth is getting it, we're getting it too, and that it creates a closer tie with that group. Bonnie?
Carrie Ann and I did not have a chance to connect on this, but I would say, my opinion is, as a first step, again, not to waste any time, that we have a liaison to the public health team meetings, but that not preclude any of the discussions we were going to have on other venues.
All right, well, I think, is anybody ready to make a motion about this, or is it something we want to wait to vote on next time? Given that it's 8 o'clock. Carrie Ann?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that as a school committee under policy file BDF advisory committees to the school committee, that we draft a description of what a COVID advisory committee to the school committee would look like for approval at the next meeting.
Second.
Well, okay, so then you're, so you're rejecting the idea of a liaison? Is that what you're saying?
I am, if we have a liaison to this meeting that's coming up in October, and I think that's really important. I totally support what Bonnie's saying, that in the meantime, that we do have a liaison, but I think that having an advisory committee is really beneficial on a variety of levels. One being that having another task that one person on this committee is then responsible for to then report back to us on expert information feels flawed in terms of how we should be having flows of communication. We have so many experts in our community. There is a policy that says that we're allowed to do this. And we have very limited ways as a school committee where we are able to discuss any information because of open meeting law. And I think that it's a really great and powerful opportunity for us to have an advisory committee who can speak to the whole group and that we can have conversations about things. So I guess in that way, yes, I am rejecting a liaison as a sole source of information for the school committee and have the motion out for an advisory committee. Thank you.
I want to be sure that my second was recognized. Jane?
Yes, I did, and being that it's 5 after 8, and I think this, I would like to hold the vote on this until the next meeting, because I feel strongly that we're over committed in subcommittees already. People are not getting the work done that we need getting done, and I don't think it belongs in a subcommittee, even ad hoc position. So I'm going to say that at tonight's meeting, I'll put it on the meeting, the agenda for next meeting, but I don't think we have the time or energy to give it the thought that we need tonight. So I don't think I'm going to entertain. I think
the motion is to create a description, Jane.
Well, you can go ahead and you don't need a motion for that. You can bring it to the table next meeting, whatever you want. I'll put you on the agenda as a discussion item. That's not a problem. I think it's just a courtesy to our committee that we've been sitting here for 2 hours already. And if we're going to be making important decisions, we need to have time and energy to consider them. So I just put on here the liaison. If you want to not take action on that, that's fine. It's not on the agenda to talk about the other thing. So Bonnie?
You just addressed the major part of it. What was just brought up is not on the agenda. Therefore, what is on the agenda, if you rule that out of order, that motion,
Yeah.
then I would make a motion that the Southern Berkshire Regional School District School Committee name an individual and an alternate to serve as liaison to the public health team meetings.
So is that what you seconded, Jeffrey?
No, he seconded.
Carrie Ann's.
I seconded Carrie Ann's motion.
Well, I think the other, as I said, that can be brought up at another meeting, but I want to know if there's a second to the idea of a liaison to these meetings. Because what Carrie Ann is talking about is something additional that is outside of the regular team meeting. So,
But it's a good point to be brought up that there is, I mean, expert advice and opinions that the liaison would be responsible for, and to have one sole person responsible for that might be.
I said I would entertain it next meeting, but not this meeting. Okay, I'm not dismissing it, but if it's something that you want to entertain, you can bring your details about it to the next meeting, and it's not on the agenda for tonight. So you can vote this down if you don't want a liaison, that's fine. We'll talk about it at our next meeting.
I just need a point of clarification because, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but Bonnie, is what you're saying that because the agenda says a liaison to the public health team meeting, you were saying that I'm out of order because I was making a motion of something that was not on the agenda? Is that what you were telling me?
Correct. That is not on the agenda. The item.
Well, I just want to make it known for public information in the record that I did ask multiple times for this specific advisory committee to the school committee to be on the agenda, and that this is what it was translated into, that my request was not heard for what was to be put on the agenda.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, so if there's clearly, you know, I can only advise based on what I'm watching about how we're operating. My discussions with MASC people and with legal about good ways for our committee to be perform their duties. But you all can vote for whatever you want, and I'm not going to block it on the next meeting if you feel so strongly, but I'd like to see the work getting done that we said we were going to do in the first place. That's all I'm going to say. So if there's no second to Bonnie's motion, then it will fail and we'll go on to the next item.
Point of order, though, Madam Chair. So am I clear? You're tabling the motion as a future agenda item for the next meeting that Carrie Ann made?
Yeah.
With your, okay, with your, so that is now removed. So just to be clear, this is now removed, the motion's being.
Yeah, I'm saying I'll entertain it at the next meeting, but I'm not bringing it up at 10 after 8 on a meeting that's got more, and we're not to the end of the agenda yet. We have 2 other items that we really need to deal with because they are very, one has to do with tomorrow. These next 2, the F and 8A, both have to do with things that are happening tomorrow.
So I'm confused on the point of order, just for the record, but I will second Bonnie's motion not to slow down us working with public health community, the public health board. So I'll second Bonnie's motion if this has been tabled.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's parliamentarily inaccurate, then we'll have to redo it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going with your.
All right, so I'm going to take a vote on whether the committee wants to have a liaison to the public health team meeting. All right,
With an alternate.
with an alternate. And those people who are interested, please contact me and we will get somebody on that, make sure
It
somebody's
hasn't
on.
passed yet.
I know, I'm just saying, if it's going to be by personal interest, hopefully, if it passes, okay. So, Bonnie,
Yes.
Art,
You stepped out.
oh, sorry. Dennis,
No,
okay. Jeffrey,
What are we voting on again? It's been hard to hear and it's moving quickly, so.
you were interested in having a liaison from this committee on to go to the public health team meetings like we go to the early ed and we go to athletics. We have people that go to these sort of special meetings so that we can report back to the full group.
Board.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, so, Art, we were voting on whether you're interested in having a liaison to the public health team meetings.
Yes.
Okay. So now Laura,
I'm gonna abstain. I'm gonna abstain. Thanks.
well, abstaining is a no.
I'm uncomfortable voting because I kind of want to hear more about this agenda item that's gonna happen at the next meeting. I just,
Well, they're
As
not exclusive, but, okay. So just to make that clear, we can have both. So now I'm up to Danelle.
Yes.
And, let's see, is Kara still here? I don't see her name up there. Kara, are you there? All right, Carrie Ann,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
okay, and Jane, yes, okay, so we're voting to have a liaison, we will be notified. Would those people interested in serving as the liaison or the alternate, let me know by email, and then I can, if there are multiple people, not sure how we decide, but I'll work with Beth on that, and you'll get plenty of notice when the meeting is.
Given some people's work schedules, is there a time that this committee usually meets?
They usually meet at 9:30 in the morning.
9:30 a.m. meeting. Okay.
That was driven by their schedules, not ours, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to acknowledge that it's very unfortunate that people who have full-time jobs can't serve in the capacities that they might like to. And in this case, there's not much we can do about it except give you a lot of notice ahead of time in case it can work out. All right, so the next item is we need to make an amendment to the school calendar for elementary parent-teacher conferences, and Beth can explain that.
So typically, when we're putting together the calendar, we set a date in mid-November for parent conferences at the elementary level. And because of COVID, we kind of did conferences differently last year. So we wanted to, and so we neglected to put the date back on this year. So I spoke with the SBREA and we talked about what would be a good date. Typically we do it in November, but November has a lot of dates already. So we talked about, according to the union, whether or not we could do the end of October or early December. The union went out and took a vote and they hoped that October 29th would be the day that they would have for, would be a half day. So we just would need the school committee's support so that we could go ahead and notify parents and get those things scheduled you know, 'cause
I-
people are-
Motion to adjust the calendar to make October 29th a half-day in order to accommodate elementary school parent-teacher conferences.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have Bonnie making the motion and Dennis seconding, and the motion is to amend the school calendar to allow for a half day on October 29th for parent-teacher conferences at the elementary level. Okay, Laura,
Yes.
Danelle,
Yes.
Carrie Ann,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes,
Dennis,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Jane, yes, so that passes, and then.
No, Jeff, yes,
Oh, Jeff, sorry.
all right.
You know, I find, or you can tell that this hybrid meeting is very difficult to run. And I'm not a big fan, even though it makes it possible for people to attend, it makes it impossible to run a meeting where relationships are front and center and everybody can be seen and heard. So I've said my piece on that. So we have some unfinished business. We were asked about day field trips within Berkshire County, I believe it was, and that was gonna, we were gonna rule on that today.
Well, what the committee asked me to do is to come back with a proposal for day field trips. So we have a current policy, IJOA for field trips, and we have IJOAR, which are the regulations or the process associated with how to get a field trip approved. Those are in our current policy manual. Currently, all of these are suspended due to COVID-19. So you asked me to come back with a proposal, and the administrative team proposes the following: lifting the suspension on the school-sponsored field trip under category 1, those that occur during the hours of the regular school day, and limit these trips to within Berkshire County. The goal is to maximize the amount of outdoor time during the trip as possible and practical. All of SBRSD's COVID safety protocols currently in place will be adhered to without exception. All field trips will be approved in writing and signed by the building principal and the superintendent prior to the trip taking place. This proposed amendment will be reviewed based on any changes made to protocols made at the school committee level.
I move what the superintendent just said.
I second what the superintendent just
Yeah,
said.
okay, so Dennis moves to accept the proposal put forth by the superintendent, and Bonnie seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
Could you reread one more time? It was just for making sure we got it correctly online.
The whole thing or just the actual proposal?
The proposal.
Okay.
The proposal.
Lifting the suspension on school-sponsored field trip under category 1, those that occur during the hours of the regular school day, and limit these trips to within Berkshire County. The goal is to maximize the amount of outdoor time during the trip as possible and practical. All of SBRSD's COVID safety protocols currently in place will be adhered to without exception. All field trips will be approved in writing and signed by the building principal and the superintendent prior to the trip taking place. This proposed amendment will be reviewed based on any changes made to protocols made at the school committee level.
Okay. All right, Laura?
Yes.
Laura? Okay, Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, Carrie Ann?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And Jane? Yes. Okay. Going on to business with district member towns. I know that we have the 12th of October, is that right, Bonnie? That's the deadline for the surveys to be submitted. I know that in my town, people are starting to ask me questions because before they fill it out, because they don't know enough about the situation. So I think if we all make ourselves available to our friends and neighbors and constituents to answer questions, to make them feel comfortable filling it out so that as many people from the communities as possible can be heard. And we only have 4 or 5 days left for that to happen. So let's hope we get a good response and that people who struggle with understanding the situation can go into it feeling a little bit more clear. And Bonnie?
A couple of things. One, I've gotten a lot of people, particularly since Monday, I spoke at the select board meeting in Sheffield, questions about paper ballots. That's paper questionnaires. That's not the case. However, the library, I know our librarian, and I'm sure the libraries in the other towns are making it possible for people to come in and use library computers in order to, and they can also sign out hotspots if they like. The other was a question that I received from Carrie Ann about access to videotapes, in other words, or TV recordings, which is more than just being able to get minutes. This is the information that Lucy Prashker gave me. And this was discussed at the community outreach meeting subcommittee. There is no provision the way we have it for CTSB to be recording all the meetings of the regional planning board. So therefore, it's inconsistent. A number of the meetings where Lucy is the chair or at the meeting, she has recorded those meetings. If anyone wants access to those recorded meetings, and she has a lot of them, she said if you directly email her, she will give you the link in order to get those recordings. And she is L. Prashker, Prashker @kanehibbard.com. So I think, Carrie Ann, that answers your question and anyone else who wanted to be able to get access to video recordings. All of the minutes and agendas continue to be posted at 8towns.org.
Thank you.
I just had a question. Do you happen to know what number of surveys have actually come in?
As of, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow, there were over 900. So I'm assuming by now it's probably getting close to hopefully double that.
Is there a limitation on how many times you can take it, or?
Yes, there is, unless you go around. The question is there a limitation on the number of times you could take it? Unless you figure ways around it. If you try to have multiple logins from the same computer, it will be rejected. Now, I don't know what happens in a family where maybe you have 3 kids, a graduate, and parents. If there are 6 people logging in a household, I can't answer that. But they were trying to avoid situations where somebody would really try to load the outcome. So there is something built in to the system that cuts off participation in terms of a computer. And then I just asked, what happens if you get a lot of people starting to go to the library? and using those, and I haven't received an answer on that yet.
Okay. Non-subcommittee reports, is there any chair who would like to make a brief report at this point? Bonnie is on the negotiations and personnel subcommittee.
Okay, so just for those of you, because we have a few new people who've not gone through this, just to give you an update. What will happen is normally we do not begin negotiating this early in the year. We are due for the 3-year contract, or we could say a 2, whatever, we determine it. But we're due for contract negotiations with SBREA. They have requested to begin negotiations now. Our usual step is that we start with a meeting that will take place between the superintendent, the subcommittee, and our attorney in order for the superintendent to outline priorities and issues. And for those of you who don't know, the negotiations subcommittee has a community member, and the community member is Bob Kilmer, a select board member from Sheffield. And I hope that based upon getting the availability of Josh, will Josh be negotiating with us for the contract? I believe so. Josh Coleman, we will set up a negotiations meeting with the superintendent. And after that is done, we then begin meeting with the SBREA and Alex Lamaglia, who is the representative from the Massachusetts Teachers Association, who's based out of Pittsfield. So that's basically the process. It hopefully will be able to set something up within the next 2 weeks.
Janelle, did you have a question?
Nope, I just need to say that we can't have a meeting on Thursday. We need to do it on Wednesday, and hopefully that's okay with everyone next week for community outreach and advocacy. The R.S.D, PD, whatever, is on Thursday. So we'll have to move it to Wednesday. I can't push it out another week.
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you to subcommittee members. We know we were trying to keep the Thursday nights, but unfortunately, I didn't. We have a Thursday night meeting of that other group, which probably conflicts with school committee meetings from our other districts as well. But anyway, that's be the case. I think I will cede my time here, and I've talked enough tonight, and the superintendent has a report for us.
I think I'm just going to report our pool testing is still continuing on a weekly basis. Out of the 32 groups tested, all pools were negative again, and it's still happening every Wednesday with all of our current protocols and practices intact. The next step for us is were requested to now invite groups from Southern Berkshire to participate in public forums. So at the request of the Regional School District Planning Board, Mr. Carpenter and I will be sending out invitations to participate. These groups will run from October 20th through November 3rd. The cohorts are broken out into students, teachers, staff, parents, and guardians. Included in that notice is a form to fill out if you are interested in participating. And I'm thinking that they might be extending the survey links because they put a link to the survey in these notices. So I did say I would get mine out tomorrow, but I think if, there might be an opportunity to continue to fill it out. So as I always say, please consider having a voice in the future of education for our students. And I almost cried some tears of joy as the rural aid, the FY22 rural school aid distribution was released yesterday, and I thought I was opening it in an exercise of futility. And I almost dropped to my knees when I found out we qualified this year.
Wow.
So since my tenure in the district, we have not received any money from the rural aid funds, and we received an award for FY22 of $70,159.16.
Whoa,
So I
great.
think we should, I don't know
I was
specifically what happened,
gonna
but
say.
Lift the glass.
yeah. We need something else, but yes, no, but we made it into priority one, so I'm not sure what changed in the formula, but I think, you know, we should thank, our local representatives for making that happen.
I
That's
know
all I
they've been
have.
working really hard. That's great. And thank you, our curriculum and professional development coordinator. I would assume your report was what we saw, but
That was my report. Thank you.
and I want to thank you very much for putting that together for us, and we look forward to looking at it, with giving it the time that it deserves. Director of Student Services?
I have an edge of the seat report that you have in your packet there. that you
Yeah,
can
right.
Peruse. I'll leave it at that for tonight. How about that?
Well, I thank you very much for sitting through our deliberations and understanding our challenges, which
Thank you.
is, I guess, important for us to act as a team that we all are thinking together. I don't see a business manager's report in our folder, and I don't see anybody up there, so that is not an issue. So for our next meeting, we have the district improvement plan and superintendent goals, which are really important for our further planning, and that's what the administration has put forward. And I hear that you want to discuss this idea of an advisory subcommittee, so I think that will be on the agenda as well. And please contact me with other ideas. I'm going to be sending, I think at that meeting, we'll probably be finalizing how we're splitting up our virtual attendances to the MASC committee conference, because we have 3 people who all are working and can't attend everything, so we're going to figure out which who's going to go to what. And I just wanted to update you that I forgot in my report time that I talked to George McGurn about the appointment of a second member from Egremont, and he says there are a few people who put their names in, and they're waiting till after the memorial service for Guinness, which is on the 16th. That's a Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock at Hickey Birches, and he says there are 100 in-person seats, and all school committee members are more than welcome to use those seats. And I can send you the link to the Zoom if you choose not to go, but he was feeling like we shouldn't stay home because we think that the seats should go to other people. So that's that. I'll take a,
I'll be happy to make a motion to adjourn, but first I wanted to suggest that we all should, if we can, send out notes to friends and neighbors that if they haven't already completed the survey, that they should take advantage of completing the survey.
Yeah. Reiterating.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, now I will, who would like to?
Motion to adjourn.
Bonnie's got the motion to adjourn.
Second.
The second is from Dennis, but I see hands up there. Those people want to say more?
Yes, future agenda item.
Yeah.
We're approaching Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. We had discussed earlier having a vote about what we would call the holiday moving forward, and we're missing it this year. I'd like it on the next agenda if we could have a brief discussion about changing the holiday name, and if we could get that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
I have one quick thing.
Yeah.
Jeff and Danelle, I need to have a building and grounds meeting. So I'm looking at dates, the 19th, the 26th and 27th. So if you could let me know which works best for you guys, I can do anything. And what time?
19th is my only option. I'll be out of town on the 26th and 27th.
What time's good for you?
I think he said none, but he's muted. You're muted.
Yeah.
Afternoon
Okay.
after work.
After work.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to adjourn. I know nobody wants to be over with, it, but it's time. Bonnie,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Bree, Danelle, Jeffrey, can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Danelle. Yeah, Carrie Ann?
Yes.
Okay, Danelle, are you, okay, I assume we're gonna adjourn, the majority wants to adjourn, and I guess we can't vote right now. So we will see each other as a full committee in 2 weeks, but I think subcommittees will be working hard in between. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.